Netflix, one of the biggest streaming services in the world. In my opinion, they have some of the best animated shows like Castlevania, Arcane, and Blue Eyed Samurai. However, some shows get overlooked or looked down upon due to low advertising, eventually getting plucked from the service entirely. Probably because of contract reasons, so and so, blah, blah, blah. But, we're just going to act like Netflix is evil because they are a big company. So, whatever. Right, right, Diamond? Shira, Cyrus the Yeager, and Kipo. What do those three have in common? They're animated and are leaving Netflix soon. Now, Netflix usually has like a bi-yearly kind of purge. I could be wrong in the accuracy there, but whatever. All these shows are good. They're having DVD versions, so even when they're leaving the streaming service, they'll still have some kind of home. They might even go into another streaming home. But when this stuff happens, it's hard for the average person to watch, especially nowadays, because nobody is just going out there to buy DVDs unless you're a nerd like me. So, these shows were successful. They had several seasons, so hopefully they can find another place. Regardless, in the same lieu of Netflix, today I wanted to highlight one of my favorite Netflix shows of Jentry Chau versus the Underworld by Echo Wu. Just so we can be a little more aware of it. Maybe we could get another season, maybe it won't. But it was a cool show, and I'd like to see more from the creator, because I feel like the show kind of went under the radar. Kind of like Invincible Fight Girl on HBO, which I might talk about one day too. I should have talked about it this month, considering that it's Black History Month, and that could have been a pretty good video. But maybe I might try to rush it out for the month ends. But it is what it is. I still want to talk about it in general. But Jentry Chau is talked about. It got an Annie Award for when it came out, pretty much. And when I bring it up with cartoon folks, or cartoon fans I should say, most people haven't even heard about it. Or they even see any trailers or teasers, because Netflix is terrible at advertising animated shows. It always never fails, unless they're like Castlevania, like I said at the beginning of the video. So overall, this discussion is a spoiler-filled one. It's also a retrospective, and beware of that if you're going to listen to this. But I also still recommend watching this video, just because it could convince you to actually watch the show, or remind you to rewatch it, because it is a cool show. It's not perfect, but it has 13 episodes, and you can really tell that has a lot of love into it. And it's pretty short overall, so you can breeze through it. I breezed through it in literally a day. So this show is pretty obviously for teenage girls. I pretty much summarize. It's a lot of kind of like Riverdale or Vampire Diaries kind of drama, with a little bit of kind of anime action mixed in. But from the first teaser, this show immediately hooked me. Of course, you guys don't know completely yet, but hopefully when I have more videos and get a little more comfortable with this kind of YouTube thing, I can get into it. But when it comes to any media, I really love supernatural elements and any kind of folklore or horror, and you got me immediately hooked. But especially if you sprinkle in some romance and stir that pot a little bit more, I'm hooked for life. So Jentry kind of like falls under that space, just like summarize that kind of genre. So it also has like classic action cartoon vibe, especially with its style. It's very distinct. Reminds me a lot of like Generator X or Young Justice, not artistically, but just like action wise. And yes, like these shows are old, but I started realizing the Generator X and Young Justice, like my early 2000s brothers and sisters, like that was like 11 years ago. So yeah. Like I said before, very anime inspired, especially like character expressions and pacing. If you've seen K-pop Demon Hunters, that's another one that kind of like looks kind of anime, but like has a little bit more American looking look. And this show also reminds me with its length like an anime OVA, but with a modern spin. Has like Buffy the Vampire vibes with her like being in high school, Jentry, and giving like a destiny of having abilities that she doesn't want, but she eventually learns to embrace them throughout the series. What I love most about the show is that like nobody in the show is perfect. They really portray like people just being people. Jentry doesn't always act like a hero. She's actually really selfish. She's a teenager, and she does whatever benefits her sometimes. She still could be called a hero. She does do heroic things, but sometimes things are caused by her powers, which doesn't help. But she develops over time. Like I said before, she doesn't really like having her powers, which I'll get into it later, how she got it, but she grows to embrace them, and the people around her grow too from her influence. Her mother and her grandmother, Mooney, her mother, Gugu, her grandmother, didn't see eye to eye, but later in the series eventually do. The series has a good lesson for kids, or at least for young adults, that like if you forgive yourself, and it becomes easier to forgive others, and instead of repressing your negative feelings you may have, you should like just say it as it is. Like it if it's a problem, it's a problem. She even like has a lot of hair changes that like shows off her growth. She accepts her heritage and her gifts and personally grows. Some may call that design basic. She goes from like a platinum blonde to like a basic like jet black kind of like hair color, brunette I guess. But from a storytelling standpoint, which I'll get into later, I think it's like her best appearance. Another ad, if you like shoujo anime, if you don't know, then it is what it is, like Sailor Moon, blah blah blah, stuff like that. If you like those type of shows, basically really girly, geared towards shows, if you like that. I'm not saying the show is completely like stereotypically girly, but it's geared towards that kind of audience. In the beginning, like Jentry goes to Seoul because of an accident as a child, which like kind of ignites the town into flames. And throughout the show, she moves back to Texas. Well, I say throughout. At the start, she moves back to Texas. and kind of like a repressed trauma throughout the show. And she uses her powers to fight demons from the other world. So this mistake that I mentioned before, like burning down a town, really impacts her as a character, and it's really like emphasized throughout and through certain characters' motives, like one of her love interests, Michael. His parents' house burnt down, so he loses a lot of like Nigerian heirlooms from his side, which really affects him. Well, more of his parents than really him, even though he still sympathizes with what he lost. But he also sympathizes with the little girl that it might have just been a mistake. So female protagonist Jentry Chau, I think it was a perfect choice. I really like female protagonists as of late, so that's a good up for me. And this show is one of the few that really puts effort into like the designs, makeup, and hairstyles for the main character of Jentry. Like each episode, basically, like I kid you not, he switches outfits and hairstyles and different like eyeliner that looks super cool. And it really reminds me of like shows like Totally Spies and Gem and Holograms and the aforementioned Sailor Moon. My only gripe with this fact is that she is the only one that switches outfits, and it's really apparent with other characters on rewatch, and it really makes you think like why didn't they put the extra effort to do it other characters? But budget, I understand it. I mean, they even had 13 episodes, so they had to shorten the runtime on certain things. I even heard that after watching some interviews that the last 3 episodes were only put in because they weren't sure they were going to get another season, which sucks to really think about, but Netflix really does do that sometimes. Jeez, I might find where that was. But whatever. It's a good thing and a bad thing, but at least it spotlights Jentry as the main character, like building her up as the unique main character among everyone else, like her powers. So, but I also feel like when you put in the effort of having one character look different, why not do that for everyone else? But it's not that big of a detail, like in the grand scheme of things. I'm really looking too into that, but I really hope that we get an art book note one day, because there isn't really that much merch of this show, which is another thing. I don't know why there's not that much merch, but I guess that's another reason why it proved that it wasn't that successful. It had that many eyes on it. So yeah, I don't know what these artists on also further say, but they really got it on point. So first time. So whenever they highlight in any cartoon, a character specific like aesthetic style, especially if it differentiates, especially if it's different from other characters, like her dyeing her hair, as a fact. Fashion is like an alternative form of expression, and it often reflects a person's circumstance, mood, or personality. And in Gentry's case,
like that's an outdated term now, now, but Allie was like, what's drip? Like, you need to explain to me what it is. And I'm like, well, you know, it's this. And like the fashion part of it, I think is about expressing your individuality, and so it kind of fits into that theme. And we knew very early on that we wanted Jentry to be someone that like wasn't your typical teenage girl in a show that just wore like overalls and Converse. Like, we wanted her to feel like very genuine.
And in Jentry's case, her whole story arc is one of discovery and finding her own voice outside of her pressures of life. So her being a teenager as well really expresses that feeling of discovery as you are close to being an adult and thrusted into the big world. I'm no fashion expert. I do like fashion, especially looking at it. But you know, you could really tell that Jentry specifically tends to wear a lot of casual streetwear, which is, you know, popular amongst teenagers and young adults. While at the same time wearing clothes that are flexible and, you know, flexible enough to fight, which she does a lot, considering that she's kind of a demon hunter in a sense. Not completely, as you might see the show, and I'll explain later, but she kind of is. And like according to like the wiki I read, it's like a K-pop girl inspired style that she really likes to go about using. I saw it's called Girl Crush, the kind of style. First time I ever heard of it, which kind of makes sense. The show has a very like K-poppy kind of style with some of the music choices. And it's even mentioned in the show that like Gentry's favorite artists are like NCT 127 and like Blackpink. So it makes sense. Plus she lived in Seoul for half her life too. So of course she got a little obsessed with that. So like I said before, Gentry's hair changes a lot. Going from like tied up to like bangs and simply just styled just differently. And her going from platinum blonde to like a natural black shade, which is original color, just shows her like maturity in a new chapter of her life. So moving on, the show really reminded me of, again, like another animated show like Kim Possible, like action wise and especially pacing from episode to episode, because there is an ongoing plot, but it's a little bit episodic at times, which is a good thing and bad thing, but they get the story across and expand upon the world as much as they can, with like a little bit of slice of life, kind of like Gravity Falls. It's one of the few cartoons that dips into the young adult range that I realize not too many shows do that nowadays. I even saw in an interview that like it isn't popular for cartoons to be in that vein, which makes sense considering that like there are so many few ones like Gravity Falls and be like over the garden wall. You're either like straight up adult or you're like a really kid friendly show. And I'll again say like the show is not very kid friendly. There's no curse words or anything like that, but people do get stabbed, and there is like crimson colored looking blood, like it's like real blood, not cartoony blood. There's like one or two times there is like with some demons that have different colored blood, but there's like real blood and real like kind of body horror esque stuff that happens. And even like one of the main the main villain, or not the main villain, one of the villains, Mr. Ching, he loves to stab people in the back. Like he gets like 4 bodies in the whole show just from like stabbing from the back. It's kind of hilarious. So I do have a few minor issues. Outside of it being 13 episodes. I do think it could have used 2 more, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. On rewatch, I think it does wrap up well enough, and then there's enough foreshadowing that pushes the story forward. But my main issue is some of the relationship dynamics that kind of just get sped through really, really quickly. Like, I saw a point, and I try not to do it too much, but like in developing this video, but I read like someone say, like, if we're gonna like have a relationship in one of these shows, really develop that relationship, don't speed run it. And this show kind of does. One of the love interests, Michael, and like second episode, and like the second episode, breaks up with his girlfriend, and he starts basically like fonding, well, not second episode, jeez, I think it's like the 6th episode, I'm forgetting right now, even though I rewatched the show like 3 times in preparation for this. It's not even in my notes, but there's moments where relationships are broken just for drama, and you can really feel the drama, and it's done pretty well. Some people might disagree with that, but I think it's done pretty well. But some relationships are speed run like really quickly, like near the end, 13th episode, and like the previous episode, it's kind of like finalized that like Michael and Jentry, they become kind of a couple. And then the 13th episode, I guess like a week went by, because there is like a montage, which is another thing they do in the show. They use a lot of like music montages, kind of like Arcane season 2, to like further on the storyline. And even though like they show stuff in it, like the plot progressing, you don't see certain things behind the scenes, which one of those things is apparently the 2 breaking up, which means like they only broke up in 1 episode, and we didn't even see the whole episode. So it's like, it's a little ridiculous to me. I feel like, I know they said they wanted to make sure the show wraps up, given that they might not give another season. But if you're gonna put in that kind of plot line, like maybe just commit to 1, because there are 2 there's 1 other love interest, and there's a reason why Mike was muted. I lost my train of thought because I got interrupted by my mom, but whatever. Dang it, I don't remember where I was. I think I was talking about relationships. So yeah, relationship in the show can be a little chaotic at times. Certain drama, it's done well, but it just could have used a little bit more time. Especially like, I do care about most of the characters, because they highlight characters that are important to the plot. And like normally, because it's like a big pet peeve of mine, I don't like, actually I hate love triangles, and Jentry, Michael, and Kit are the triangle of the show, which is kind of typical for these kind of young adult shows, so it makes sense as it's in it. But it's not really hammered home that annoyingly, but the will they, won't they, it's still there, and it kind of bothers me, especially when there's 2 people doing it. Like, I prefer romance where it's just 2 people trying to love each other. But I understand with it being in high school, which relationships like that happen, if you remember. So it makes sense that, some kind of love quarrel happens between three people. And I think it's done decently well, like I said. Just now I'm on the rant of it all. Another pet peeve of mine is that, and you let me know in the comments, what are like 3 pet peeves that you don't like in like stories. My second one would be like memory loss arcs. I hate those ones. And time travel arcs, which I don't think they're in that many stories, but it's one of those ones that like when it comes up, I'm like, oh brother, I hope this is good. Because I remember comics do those a lot, especially like those clone arcs that like come up randomly. Like there's a Spider-Man one, if you know, you know. I kind of hated that one. But then again, like everything in the show is done to like kind of like mediocre to like really great. So I feel like I know I said like 13 episodes felt like too short, but I feel like the pacing was done decently well. Even if it is on the shorter end, which it's kind of odd that we think, I say we, but I think like 30 minutes to 29 minutes is short, because when you really think about it, that isn't short, but it just feels like it is, probably because I watch shows that are like 40 to 50 minutes long for each episode, like Mighty Nine, as of recently, that like it makes it feel like it's a little too short, but it's not that big of a deal. I just wish we had more character build up episodes, like that like highlighted the main crew, like episode 4 and 5, a combination of both, but 4, 5, and 6, those are great like character building episodes that like for like more supporting cast, because like the main cast like Jentry, I guess kind of Ed and Gugu kind of are like the central key characters of like the whole story, and everyone else like Michael, Kit, and Stella, even like Principal Willer, which I'll talk about all those characters later, but are like the main characters of the story. Not main characters, supporting characters of the story. So I just wish you got more highlighted moments of those, but when we do get them, they are good enough and they suffice enough for furthering their minor plot lines and character arcs. So the Chinese culture, to get to that, because Jentry is a Chinese American, is really charming, and I'm not Asian, obviously, as you can see, but I could really tell that a lot of love went to that part as the creator, since she is a Chinese American. There's a lot of different nods and creatures to that from my research, and even the music again. They aren't Chinese by any sense, but the really cool intro Flame by Cat's Eye goes really hard, and a lot of the like animation, because it's like a different type of style in the intro, which I'll show in the video, is really cool and really novel with me, because a lot of these recent cartoons just skip out on intros, whether it's because of budget or not, but it just makes the show more memorable to me. Well, that's at least what I remember most about these shows, good or bad. I've seen some pretty bad cartoons, but I still remember their intro. The background music of Jentry Chau is great. Again, it's very modern and diverse with its tracks. It has like SZA in the tracks, has like Billie Eilish. A lot of really good tracks. And I really hope on the merch front again, we get like a CD. There is a vinyl, but God, I don't want to rant about that. But geez, vinyls have such a pull on the music space. I know vinyls are like, you know, retro and legit, but like, I don't want to invest in like a whole vinyl set just not to use it too much as I would just use a CD in my car. Yeah, so regardless, that's my little, you know, a little pet peeve of mine. I even heard that when it came to the soundtrack aspect from an interview from Echo Wu, that was one of the most difficult things to get in, but somehow they were able to get an extra budget from Netflix to fit in all those. And you'll be surprised, there's some like legit artists besides the ones I mentioned that are in this besides from the original soundtrack, which is great within itself.
The second is like you can hassle people. They'll be like, that's way too much money. Like animation, you're right, almost never gets a music budget. So it's very unique for this show to get a music budget, but it was like embedded into the show. It was like, so, again, the story is serviced the story in a certain way. And it was very much about embedding us into Gentry's POV, and that required music that she listened to. And so it was all this stuff that they were like, this project clearly needs music, and we had to budget that in. And so they come up with this like budget, and a big lump of it went to music in this case, because we knew that was happening. And like I had the producers come to me and be like, this is a good budget, this is a robust budget. We have never seen this much budget before.
So let's move on. The setting of Jentry Chau versus Underworld. It's like set into like a fictional Texas town called Riverfolk, and I forgot to write down what this is based on, but I do remember hearing this in an interview. But it's based off an actual town that Echo Wu grew up in, and it's a very immersive and real feeling town. So to really treat, especially in like the episodes, like the episode 6 with the state fair. That was a really cool episode, seeing all those background, and especially able to like compare like big text to like cartoon form. Really cool to see that real aspects in the work. And as most people know, I hope, Texas is a very diverse state, and it's really reflected in the show. Like the whole cast is extremely diverse, besides from like the titular main character of Jentry Chau, who is a Chinese American. You have like main characters like Michael, who's black, also Nigerian heritage, but he's black. Just gonna call him black. You have Stella, who's Hispanic. It's never really stated, but you can kind of tell she is. It's just really great to see people like this in maybe not realistic depictions, but just depicted in a pretty real way. Like everyone else, everyone feels like a teen for the most part, making like rash choices. Everyone has their own like individual insecurities. Growing up, accepting who they are, what others won't. It's like kind of like the main theme of the whole show. Finding your own voice, I'd say. And like the relationship with like Michael and his parents, and their portrayal of just being married, ethnic parents, was like great to see on screen, because it isn't portrayed that much. especially in cartoons or any media for that aspect. And, you know, showing that they're just trying their best to raise a growing young man. And, you know, they're not perfect either. You know, they hide stuff from him too, like his powers. Like when Michael starts having visions, because he has powers too. Gentry's not the only one that ends up having powers or fights in the show, which is pretty cool. But he learns that he has powers, and his parents don't tell him that, and that's like another kind of you know, just human aspect of the show that just happens sometimes. You hide stuff from your children that, you know, you think would benefit them not to know, when really it could help them, especially in like crucial moments in their life, like them being a teenager and them flaring up. Yeah. Whatever you see me do, you know, I'm not gonna say it. So get to some major plot points, just to refresh some people. So I've kind of just been yapping about how much I love the show. And this is not gonna be perfect. I'm gonna try my best. So the show starts off with Jentry returning from Seoul, like I said before. She returns to Texas because she's chased by the villain of Mr. Chang, which when she turned 16, he agreed. Well, not agreed. I won't say yet. It's a crucial point. He said that he would find Jentry and steal her powers. We don't know yet why, but later, that's when we find Ed too. She fights Ed. That's the first demon we see. He's like a Jiangshi, which when it comes to pronunciation of these Chinese folklore or Chinese names in general, you know, give me some grace. I'm not gonna have it that perfect. But with doing this, when she fights Mr. Chang, she opens a portal to DU by accident, and it kind of allows demons to slip out, and that's kind of like what happens at the beginning of the story of Jentry kind of just fighting demons. Jentry eventually gets haunted by her past. She starts getting visions of her parents, what's called a memory pearl, which I'll get into more later, or I'll just say memory pearls, just to remind everyone, are kind of, well, like I said, memory pearls, but they're like these really gruesome looking magical pearls that like seep into your skin. And this is like one of the body horror stuff, like when it like really seeps in your skin, like stabbing into your skin, and your veins kind of expand. It's really grimy. It's a really cool effect that they have. But we also see Kit, which is another love interest, and this is all happens pretty fast, like the first and second episode, pretty much. So, man, order. So, Jentry gives up her powers, thinking this be best for her not to have them anymore, which in turn allows for Mr. Chang to get her powers from what's like kind of called the Yellow Emperor's robes, which is like the source of her power, original source, and I'll get into that later. and she gives it to Mr. Chang's daughter. Well, Mr. Chang gives it to her daughter, to his daughter, which is like kind of his whole plot point. He's trying to revive his daughter from the dead, and he'll do anything for it. Soon after that, Jentry defeats Mr. Chang. He dies, and a Mogwai, which was the real final villain, he was like kind of a parasite, kind of I'll just say parasite, like kind of like a parasite, symbiote kind of thing that attached to Mr. Chang that made him more evil and kind of made him do all the things he did, like stabbing Gentry's parents, even though he had a little bit of a choice to do it as well. But regardless, the Mogwai eventually gets captured by what is by these underworld guards called like Oxhead and Oxhorse, the Oxhead and Horsehead, and they capture him. After that, Jentry goes to the underworld to find the Mogwai, because the Mogwai says that he knows where her mom is. And now I think about it, I'm mixing some stuff in between, but these are just major plot points, so let me lock in. After that, Jentry finds her mom. They reunite. The Mogwai gets away again, and he finds Gentry's mom, and I'll get into it later, but they made a deal originally that's like kind of like a Tsukiyomi. I probably should elaborate more, but it's like it kind of like gives her visions that can't give her a normal life anymore, so she has to help him in a sense. Like he still has a big control over her. So after that, they have like a lock-in for Homecoming, and that's kind of like the final episode. Some big fights happen, and Gugu dies permanently. Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention before. Jeez, I'll when I get to the character stuff, I'll say that. But Gentry's grandmother dies in the first episode, trying to protect her, and she turns to a ghost. So like throughout the whole show, she's like a ghost, and she then dies again permanently, and Gentry moves back to Seoul with her mother. Kind of like the major plot points. Missed some stuff, like I said, but we get to the character stuff, I will try my best to elaborate more. This is a lot harder than I thought. Even with a script and notes. So Jentry Chau, I'm just saying characters now. So characters. Jentry Chau means nobility of birth, which is fitting for her power, considering that he has the power of the Yellow Emperor, and that's not a racist thing. It's just what it's called, or Hangji, is his original name. He's like a deity of one of the highest powers in DU or the Underworld. Not DU. DU is the Underworld. I keep saying DU like there's DU. I know my mic speaking. It's DU. Sorry. DU and the Great Beyond. DU, Great Beyond. I forget they mentioned in the show the Chinese name equivalent for the Great Beyond, but it's often just said the Great Beyond, and DU is called the Underworld, or just the Underworld. So we find out that Jentry wasn't born with her powers, but instead she was given those powers at a young age by Gugu. And jeez, I'm all over the place. From a young age, from Gugu. I'm a big fan of knowing what names means, so I found this fact really interesting. I don't know if it's important or it was intentional for Jentry to be named Jentry like that and have the meaning behind it, but that's just something I kind of found myself. And I know Jentry is kind of not the traditional way of spelling Gentry. Could be wrong, but at least in an interview, that's what Echo Wu said. He put like a J instead of a G. I think I put this. Not that last part. About the girl crush stuff with her streetwear, her outfits. With Jentry Chau. Her having like a K-pop inspired. Yeah, I did. So yeah, Jentry Chau, like generally, is a pretty nice person overall, but she has her flaws. She's pretty petty, selfish, like I said in the beginning, and a bit manipulative. I kind of disagree with this, but it was brought up from Echo Wu describing her own character, so I can see it. There are some moments of her being a little manipulative, but whatever. And I'll try to link these interviews down below. But regardless, she's very mature for age, Gentry. She realizes her mistakes before they prolong any further, and she's usually not usual. She's like your usual no nonsense, want to be independent teen, but with a good reason. She seems like a really good student and has good social skills, which is shown a lot. Kind of mentioned that she's a good student in episode 2, so I'll take that as it is. Gentry is a great main character in my opinion that like the audience can kind of relate to through her ups and downs, either through school life, family troubles, like lying friends or lying family. But she's also pretty fun to see grow because she is young, and her having powers and never wanting them kind of spices up the drama from scene to scene. Having the audience ask like, what will she do next? When her powers go out of control? Once they do, you'll see they do out of control. She burns a lot of stuff up. Her powers are kind of connected to her emotions. Kind of like Jean Grey from like X-Men, if you ever seen that. I think I got that right. Oh, to see the Hulk. She has a very, like, everything that she does is pretty connected to her powers, but she soon learns to kind of control them and use them in the right way. Pretty fast by the end. I say like by like 7th episode really figures out how to use it. So yeah, Gentry opening up a portal to DU, or the Underworld, kind of puts a target on her back throughout the show. High-ranking demons come after her. Mr. Chang, the antagonist, it's easier for him to move between realms, so that's like another thing, which it kind of already was before. The Mogwai kind of gives him a power to kind of the same power as Gentry, as she eventually learns to open up portals. Gentry has a lot of powers. I'll add. She is a very overpowered character. It'd be pretty cool to see like more media of her, whether it's in comic form or another season somehow one day, which the show ended in a very conclusive way, where not every plotline wraps up. Like Michael doesn't completely learn his powers, so we could still see more of that. Obviously relationship, like in the finale, Jentry and Michael do get back again. They break up and they get back again. Teenage drama. They break up and get back again. So it's pretty concluded. So let's move on. Gugu / Flora Chau. So Gugu's kind of like I forgot the name was called. Jeez. Protagonist and Durotagonist. Yeah, there you go. She kind of like she's a secondary kind of protagonist of the show. She tends to have a lot of screen time like Jentry. For good reason too. She's Gentry's great aunt. Oh my gosh, I said grandma this whole time. Jeez. That's gonna be real awkward at the start. I'll have to edit that out. Or not edit some kind of text. Great aunt, not grandma. I know how I messed that up. She's a Taoist priest. Like I said before, she turns into a ghost and she dies from Mr. Chang in episode 1, trying to protect Jentry. Few things about her: she owns a craft store. She dies permanently in episode 13, like I said, in her ghost form, but that's kind of looking out of order. Since, and this is like another thing, small thing. So we learn in the show that ghosts, well, let me start from the beginning. When people die, they can either go, well, depending on, you know, what they did in life, they go to DU or the Great Beyond. But another option is that they can become a ghost if their will is strong enough to stay alive and watch over their family. And not everyone can see ghosts. Gentry's only able to see ghosts because she has a third eye and she's able to see supernatural stuff. I don't know too much about it, but I assume I should have done research on this, but I assume that like third eyes, like because I've seen it a lot in like Chinese based shows, or like at least reference and like those kind of folklore, that like the third eye has a lot of significance of like the supernatural. So I assume, and I guess this just means like the saying like open your third eye, I guess. Alright, that's not the saying goes, but whatever. You know, the third eye like symbolizes like seeing the unseen, so it kind of makes sense whenever it's kind of like said. That's just kind of what I got to it from it. So when they turn to a ghost, their soul can't go to the DU or the Great Beyond, so they're kind of like in a standstill. And when they do die, because ghosts can die, like I said, they just disappear. Eventually, like, you know, their memory is just lost. And it's pretty sad, considering that, you know, everything Gugu does, good or bad, is for Jentry. And I'm sure as like she became kind of like her mother in a sense when her parents disappeared, kind of because of her, but I'll get into later. When her parents disappear, she takes over like the motherly role, so she cares a lot about Jentry. In the end, her dying moments, Gentry gets the memory pearls. I hope you remember that. she gets the memory pearls and saves Gugu's memories into the memory pearls so she can never forget her, which is really sweet. And Mooney and Gugu, despite their differences, which I'll get into Mooney more, but despite the differences, they finally forgive themselves, because when Mooney gets corrupted by the Mangwe, Gugu is the only one that could really save her through her mind, and she kind of rips her conscience away and the Mogwai away, from like kind of possessing her. And that like really, that like moment, they have like one moment together where I'm sorry. They both say they're sorry to each other, and they finally forgive each other for whatever troubles that, you know, separated the two. And that's my notes. But Ghost, like going off of possession, it's shown in episode 5 that ghosts aren't allowed to possess the living, and it's kind of like a big rule that like is not allowed to be crossed. And it kind of gets Gugu in trouble later on, and he gets some others in trouble. But I'll get into like the main place that they go to when they go to prison. So in retrospect of watching this for like the 3rd time, so I did watch it out when it came out, and then I watched it pretty recently. But Gugu really, I mean, there's like 3 villains in the show, but Gugu could really be seen in those 3 villains as an antagonist, the Jentry, mostly due to her, you know, quote unquote decisions for Jentry, best decisions for Jentry. She's very manipulative and controlling when things don't go her way. And even though it was in bad taste when Gentry's parents stole from her Taoist priest hideout, which, oh my gosh, this is outside of the video, but I'm just gonna say it. I thought I had a good script. I feel like I do, but whatever. Things are coming to me that I could have elaborated more on. Taoist priests, not said most about them, but from what I could get is that they're like demon hunters essentially, but since they don't get paid real money, or paid anything really from fighting the supernatural, a lot of them either do like severe like underhanded like what's the word, not mafia, they just do not underworld stuff, black market stuff. They do like kind of like black market stuff. Some go in that direction, some don't. But Gugu in particular, she's like one of the best Taoist priests of her century, we learn. And she really takes that role really seriously, to the point where like it kind of like influences a lot of problems in her life. Like everything she does is for her craft, and it kind of backfires on her, like with the hideout stuff. All she had to do, even though it would have been bad for her to just give it up, because it is such a powerful object, the Yellow Emperor's robe to Gentry's parents, because that's what they were there to steal for Mr. Ching. And like I said before, it was in bad taste for them to do it because it is such a powerful and evil object. But it is what it is, and instead she made the choice to transfer that power to Gentry. And her parents only made a deal with Mr. Chang, the antagonist, like I said, because they wanted to live a rich life and they're tired of working the black market. And you know, I kind of wondered why they couldn't just do a normal job, but I'm assuming, because I kept trying to figure it out, but I'm gonna assume that it's Ping, which I'll just say it now. I was gonna say it later, but Ping, Gentry's father, was blood related to Gugu. So he was the one that married, considering they share the same name. But well, on Gugu's from, she's Gugu Chau, and he's Chau. Both of them are called Chau as the parents, of course, because they're married. But she's called Gugu Chau. So like, I was trying to make a connection, at least connection wise, especially when Peng dies. She seems a lot more emotional for losing him than Mooney. Even though she's sad when she loses Mooney too. She loses her memory from Mr. Chang because he wasn't able to get the robes. But whatever. Sad thing. What? Y'all forgive me. What Google uses are like these magical pots to transfer the power to Gentry, which is pretty important to know. If you remember or listen to this for the first time or seen it for the first time, it's kind of like how Gentry takes away her powers and puts it back in the robes, the later parts of the season, which doesn't go well. But Gugu regrets what she did. It's not like she's not, remorseful for her actions, which is really respectful. But she does take on the role of Gentry's parent. When Mooney was still alive, she could have found her, but instead she wanted, she just found it easier to take on the role as a parent instead of trying to find a way to save Ping or even find Mooney, who was still alive. And the deal she makes is to revive Mr. Chang's daughter in some fashion. And he believes her to a certain degree, but he needed some, word is losing my brain, but he needed something to trade just in case she betrays her, which is why Gentry's father dies and Mooney loses her memory. But even though Gugu means well, going off of her to me kind of being an antagonist, she repeatedly does similar things, like tricking Gentry with shapeshifter cats from the prison in Zongyun. I think I said that wrong, or Zong I think it's called, but no, Bizu or something like that. I mix it up my names even though it's right in front of me. But she tricks Gentry with these shapeshifters, and it's just because she still believes in a narrative that her parents being dead is better for Gentry in the long run, instead of just trying to find Mooney. She knows she's alive. But ultimately, this is all for like Gugu's own sanity at the end of the day. Instead of realizing that this was all really caused by her, what she does realize later in the season. And it's really not too late, kind of, when she does die. So Mr. Chang, or Changlon, man, this video is gonna be long. Sheesh. Otherwise it'd be shorter than an hour. Oh my gosh, my script is like 20 pages. So to me, and I'll show up screen, but Mr. Chang has like one of the coolest designs, most because he's masked, and I love masked characters. But like I said before, he's obsessed with bringing back his daughter, Zalon, I believe his name is, but I think I have it in my notes. But he's obsessed with bringing her back, and his whole monster form is kind of like a mech. Well, not a mech, I shouldn't say mech, but it's not his real body. He is human, but he's kind of lost. He's been lost in the darkness for too long. So he just has like another body wrapped around from the Mogwai. And when Mr. Chang dies in episode 10, you know, like I said before, we find out he isn't the real final antagonist. He dies in a very sweet moment where he reunites with his daughter. And he promises to meet her again in the great beyond. And she is from the great beyond. Well, she died to go to the great beyond. And when she comes back, she does not want to be there, which is understandable. If I went to heaven, I would not want to come back to Earth. But you know, until his soul is pure, he's gonna keep fighting to make it back there, which is really cool, and also really sweet. It's really good that his arc concluded in a good way, instead of a vengeful way again. So the Mogwai. So Mogwais are kind of like, you know, like I said before, like symbiote, parasitic kind of little buggers. Like, I hope I can find his design, but he's not gross, at least to me, because I'm not that like grossed out by him. But he's a little slime ball, with teeth, basically, no eyes or anything. He's the final antagonist. Mogwai can merge with any individual, but by a deal. And basically, I don't know why I'm looking at my second screen. They grant him abilities depending on like how powerful that person is, and especially when he possesses Jentry, he gains a lot of power due to her having a Yellow Emperor's power. His host remains in control, but still under influence of the Mogwai, twisting the host's actions and their behavior to become similar to his. The Mogwai is pure evil. It's just cruel, it's apathetic, and it becomes more cunning and deceiving the longer it possesses you. And on rewatch, you'll notice how much is foreshadowed, or at least mentioned casually. It's a really interesting thing I noticed that I definitely didn't notice the first time. So originally I thought the Mogwai were demons. Like what? Like, because everything in the show has the Chinese name equivalent to it. So like to a certain point, I just assumed when they said something like Chinese, I was like, that was the final name for it. And the way like the Mogwai is interchanged at the start, I thought that it was like the equivalent of what a demon was. But of course, on further watch and using my context clues and my reader's hat, I realized that Mogwai are a completely separate thing. But the Mogwai dies in a brutal fashion, very satisfying fashion, by Jentry's hands. He like burns that sucker up, and it's really cool. Yeah. So Zhao Len, hope I said that right. I'm trying to remember everything how they pronounce it in the show to my best ability. She's the daughter of Chang, that's revived in the show. She really adamantly does not want to be alive again. And she almost destroys the Chown. She almost destroys the town in episode 10, I believe. I should have wrote that part down. But she has the Yellow Emperor's robe stripped around her from Mr. Chang when he took that power. And she went to the great beyond at an early age, so she's still really childlike. Because assuming when you go to a great beyond, whatever form you already are, which I think this is in most mythology portrayed, like every heaven like thing is, when you die, whatever form you're in, you go up there in that form, or down there in that form. But she never gets a proper send-off in the great beyond, body-wise. So the crew and Jentry, to give her a proper burial, and because she's been racked up by Mr. Chang, kind of like hauling her for centuries, well, thousands of years I should say, as the show says. It's kind of insane that body stayed up that well. And she's buried with her father. Already went on having my notes for whatever reason. The great beyond, heaven-like place. The afterlife, for the dead. I don't want to put the mark that far. Getting used to this first time. So Ed, named after Edward Cullen. If you don't know who that is, read a book. You should know. He's a Jiangxi Chinese hopping vampire. Probably seen it in folklore, or have it on, or like in movies or whatever. Darkstalkers, Senko, she's one of them. But he's essentially like the comic relief of a psychic, and I think he's pretty well written as the funny little psychic. I often found myself laughing at his antics and jokes, especially him being tiny. Whenever he gets hit, he has that like a squeaky toy sound effect, and I thought that was pretty funny. I like slapstick humor. But he's also becomes like Jentry's best friend, and he originally for episode 1 was like an antagonist type, her first one, and he eventually becomes someone the cast and Jentry can rely on either for like emotional support, or in action scenes, because he's a shapeshifter, and that's pretty useful. And to be fair, it's kind of hard to say. He has that like cartoony, I don't know what to compare right now, but I guess like Ron Stoppable. He's like a best comparison, like Ron Stoppable from Kim Possible. Have you ever seen that show? Like, that's like my best comparison to him. Like, he's that kind of archetype. So if you like that archetype, or if you don't, I guess just beware of that because he is in a couple scenes, but not that much. I have this down. Yeah, I might as well say it. Jeez, I just watched this episode so I can remind myself. I forgot. But Bai Su Shen, I hope I have a picture of her on screen. So I really like her design. She's like a snake spirit. She's like half snake, half human. She's the one that gives Chang the Mogwai and the mask. We learn from her. She's only in like one episode, and she's only in like, it's like a flashback. She's only in like, I guess like a minute of screen time, probably even less than that. But you know, she really is the catalyst of what Mr. Chang's whole arc and why everything really happens, because it's kind of implied that like one time she lost a child of her own, and she was just as desperate as Chang to bring them back. So she's kind of key to his downfall and the power he gets. I wonder if, again, in season 2, if we could see her again, because I assume, I don't know how Chinese folklore, all of it works. I've only seen certain media of these characters or creatures portrayed, but I assume she's like an immortal type of being, or at least a long living type of being. And I think it would be really cool if we got her in some way in the next season, not as like a villain or anything, because that wouldn't make sense. She didn't seem like the villain type. She seemed really chill, just wanted to help out a man who's lost it all. But it'd be really cool to see her. Yeah, like like you ever see like Silver the Hedgehog? I'll put him on screen. Man, I'm putting a lot of editing for myself. Like Silver the Hedgehog, she has like that silver hedgehog kind of hair, kind of funny. Yeah, that's it for minor character, very minor character. So Michael Oli, forgot to say his last name right now. He's like the child friend, love interest for Jentry. He also gets powers later in the show, like I said, from his Nigerian heritage. You can see the future is what his power is, which is really cool. You know, I really wish, because it happens kind of, I don't want to say randomly, but it happens because of you know, I assume it happened because, you know, it was a cool thing to add. What am I talking about? Jeez. Yeah, Echo Wu, I saw in the interview that he was supposed to get more screen time in the show, especially for his powers, and we do see it a few times, like flashes of him seeing the future, trying to save Jentry or trying to save his friends, but it's not enough. I feel like Michael gets like the least screen time considering his role in the series, at least for a main supporting character. And it really shows that like they were trying to have a subplot with him, but given the runtime, just wasn't able to fit in.
Like, people are asking about like Michael's powers. It's kind of like implied that it is like a generational thing in his family. Like, whenever he reveals that he's having these visions to his family, they're instantly like understand, and they kind of like let him do it. But it wasn't really like, I guess, super fleshed out in the show. Is that something that was like pretty like well thought out beforehand, or?
It was because so we had a couple of cultural consultants on the show. Like, I'm not a mythology expert by any means, and so one of the cultural consultants was a Chinese, Korean, Japanese mythology expert. She had like she was like multi PhD, you know, so, and she was awesome. The other cultural consultant we had was a Nigerian cultural consultant, and about Nigerian lore, and specifically Yoruba lore. And one of the things that we were kind of toying around was like the origin of Michael's powers and where that came from. And that was really fun. But circling back on like the things that we have to sacrifice, I do think Michael's storyline was really sacrificed at the end, but also kind of gives rooms for us to explore, you know, come back to it and later down the line, season 2 in comics or whatever. Like that is something to explore for Michael. But yeah, it was trying to allude that like there are
would have fit
multiple...
in, like Echo Wu said, which is unfortunate because I wouldn't say he's my favorite character, but it's cool to have that kind of representation in this kind of show, considering everything else we get. But yeah, he sacrifices. Jeez. Pause. I messed up my wording there. Which one was but yeah, I wish he was more involved. His powers more involved in the storyline, like Kit, which I'll get into. But sometimes, you know, you gotta sacrifice at least one of your characters for another one's character development time, which I understand as a writer myself. Then again, they only got one season, so who knows, they might be able to in another one. At least they built it up instead of not doing it at all. Because I feel like, at least conceptually, I always like future scene characters, especially since his is like from his Nigerian heritage, which was implied by his parents, and like we're like rarely exposed that type of culture. So it'll be really, really dope to get that in another season. I don't need to reiterate this again. I yapped about it before, but Michael, in episode 12 and early 13, he starts hanging out with another girl, and it's so random because in the previous episode, it's implied that Jentry and him started dating, but then, you know, they broke up. And I thought at first it was because Michael was being stupid, because he was hanging out with this girl, but they had already broken up off screen, which is really unfortunate. But then we get like the most intimate kiss scene in the whole show, and there's a few kiss scenes in this show, minor ones before, but we get one major one with Kit, and then one really huge major one in the final episode with Michael and Jentry, since they're the final couple. And man, it's like a kiss that's super impactful. They even have like a intense guitar riff, like sheesh, and it's very like, if you've seen Riverdale, it's very Riverdale like with its lighting. And even though it's a pretty rushed conclusion before the big finale, it's still, you know, a pretty good moment, at least to have it, even though I feel like it could have used some more build up to it. But if this is going to be one story, I think I'm fine with it. But if it's like another season, I feel like it should delve into that a little more, but whatever. Michael also gets like a vision of the two fighting together in the future. I kind of think, since they don't show it, he just kind of says it. I'm assuming he means like as adults, as like probably like demon hunters or Daoist priests, which would be really cool as like another season type of concept. I would love to see that transpire and develop, but again, you never know how this show might goes. And maybe they even have like a demon hunting shop on like some Devil May Cry vibes. That'd be pretty dope. Excuse me. Burped. So Zhang outside of Jentry, he has definitely my favorite design. He has like a laid back voice, kind of like well, it's not that deep, but in terms of like chillness, kind of like Spike from Cowboy Bebop. But he has short screen time, but his performance is dope. Plus, what he introduces is the most interesting part. So he's like the guardian of BZ. Probably pronounced it wrong, but whatever. Which in Zong, means the middle, no living things are allowed there, and it's kind of like the afterlife for prisoners, for ghosts. I also found online that he's like a renowned figure, Zhang in Chinese mythology and folklore. He's like revered as like a powerful demon hunter, or also known as like the king of ghosts who vanquishes evil spirits. He's like often depicted with like fierce bearded man. He's like a brilliant scholar, and he's also like considered ugly for his appearance, which is odd because I definitely don't know how he's seen as ugly. Like, he has a really dope beard. But whatever. He's a cool minor character that has some moments. I really wish his action was a little bit more diverse. He kind of just swings his big sword, or he just turns a portal with his sword on the ground, which his scenes were a little cooler. But regardless, that's just my minor pet peeve. So the next character, Kit. He's what's known as a painted skin demon, and he's like the love interest. The other love interest, next to Michael, completing the triangle. It's kind of like the foreign exchange student kind of type. But later on we find out that he's a painted skin demon and not just a regular, your average Asian guy from Korea. But he, in simple terms, a painted skin demon is someone who, not someone, but it's a thing that like replicates real human forms, allowing them or Kit to blend into human spaces. There's like a cool moment, or a couple cool moments, where he even makes his skin look like Jentry to help her out. And when she extracts her powers in episode 8. Thank you, Jack. I'm sorry. The burps. You just have to see this on camera, guys. Sorry. Let's get some water. I could like pause this and edit this out later. Jeez, I've been talking for an hour. Wow. All right. So, yeah, he's one of the pretty cool demons of the show that's highlighted. He's like tall and lanky outside of his like human skin. He has like little horns on the side. I'll show on the screen, and it's even like depicted, or not depicted. It's like an odd fact that he says that he sweats under his fake skin when he brings it up, talking to Ed in episode 7. So Kit's character arc is that he makes a deal with Mr. Chang to get his soul. And if he kills / gets the power of the Yellow Emperor from Jentry through this assignment, he will soon Yellow Emperor from Jentry. But through this assignment, he soon genuinely falls in love with Jentry, and she truly makes him feel human. And he even asks her to the homecoming dance with like a skin-made mom, and it's really disgusting. I'm like, dude, like, come on, you couldn't just buy one from the store. It's gross. If you don't know what a mum is, I'll put it on screen, but yeah, it was gross. And you know, when it comes to the relationship aspect, I totally agree with Jentry. She says that in episode 10, I believe, that it's pretty odd to date a guy who's been alive for centuries. You know, even if he looks her age with fake skin. So, you know, I like that type of thing was addressed, because even in like, you know, animes, like, if you know, you'll have like a girl dating like a centuries old guy. It is never an odd thing that like he's in high school, but he's like centuries old. Like, is that not odd? Whatever. There's a really good scene. Kind of funny, also really good too. But Jentry told him during a funny scene of dissecting a frog, which kind of reminded me of my own experience. If you ever dissected a dead frog, you never forget the inside of those things. Smell, it's so awful. But she says a soul isn't something you can either have or not have. It's who you choose to be, which really hit like really hard. You know, after living centuries of his life, Kit realizes, thanks to Jentry, he can decide who he wants to be, which kind of like harps on the whole theme of the show of finding your voice and realizing who you want to be. Now Kit makes some pretty bad choices, almost like, you know, harassing choices, up until his death, but he's like ultimately a really good guy that just wanted to be loved and be a normal boy. When he sacrifices himself for Jentry, again, Mr. Chang is just on a stabbing streak, stabs him right in the back. You know, he loves to do that. You know, Kit has a really good conclusion in this character arc when he saves Jentry, kind of like rectifying everything he's done, I think. And it kind of just, again, concludes his character pretty well. So, I do something. So, oh no, my script. No. Sorry, people that are listening. This is basically a podcast at this point of me yapping about a show I like. So, Stella. And again, guys, I'm gonna do better next time. My next video, I'm gonna do better. Even if I have a script, stick to it like I have a script. Blah, blah, blah. So Michael's ex-girlfriend and Jentry's like new best human friend in Texas. She has a few moments. She's a minor character again. She has a few moments where she uses magical Chinese talisman at the end, which I feel like could be really key to another season. Her being a cool minor sporty character, like becoming a Taoist priest. One day, kind of like filling the spot of Gugu's spot as a Taoist priest. that'd be a cool thing for her to do. But regardless, she has like a key trait where she loves sticking to a plan and planning things. It's like our whole character. I thought that was pretty cute. I like to plan things too. Not always well, but I like to plan things. She also is implied to fall in love with Jentry's Korean best friend Toki when they like accidentally hold hands. They like blush looking into each other's eyes, kind of like in that stereotypical like classic look, locking eyes. It's like a visual, conjecture of mine, but I feel like it's pretty obvious, like if you see it. Billy Bowie, I'll just highlight him. He's already on my list. He's in one of my favorite episodes of the show, the Alamo episode 4. We like also learned in that episode that ghosts are scared of sound. Not that important later on, but at least in the episode we learn that ghosts are afraid of loud noises. Hopefully, another season, that's another thing that could be key to some kind of plot. But we also see Zon Q for the first time that episode, and it shows us that possessing ghosts, or let me rephrase it, ghosts possessing people is illegal, and according to higher forces of the world, it cannot do. That's a big no-no. And Billy Bowie, again, minor character, very minor character, but he's a minor antagonist. Kind of sad character. He just wanted friends, but instead he started relying on ghosts, evil ghosts at that, from Alamo, and yeah, he kind of just became obsessed with that. Vice Principal Wheeler, my favorite personal character outside of Jentry. He's like obsessed with the demon girl, aka Jentry, that burned down most of the town, and he's hilarious. I'll put like a clip of him. I won't have any sound, but it's still kind of funny. He has very good visual hijinks and expressions. I love his little crazy conspiracies that he has. He has like a whole wall, and the conspiracy on Jentry throughout the show. It is pretty mean the way he does it. He kind of like puts a spotlight on Jentry too much, trying to expose her, even though she's just trying to be a normal girl. But whatever. Gentry's parents. We're getting close to the end, people, so thanks for sticking around. Subscribe. Paying Chau dies or collateral for Mr. Chang because of Gugu. Mooney Chau, Gentry's mom, loses her memories again to Mr. Chang / the Mogwai as a part of a bargain to keep Jentry alive and for Gugu to figure out how to bring his daughter back. Jeez, I've been talking for so long, I'm losing my voice. So I really want to think about it. Yeah, they are very greedy. Let's not even kid. They didn't have to go in the black market, but they chose the easy way instead of going the hard way of life. Not saying like being a drug dealer or anything is easy, or being some kind of dealer is easy, because they're like it. Mooney says something like she sells like Jiangxi meat, one time to an assignment, which is pretty funny but also kind of dark. Considering Ed is a Jiangxi, and she was telling Ed that. But it's just one of those things where like they could have made different choices in life, and instead they chose kind of the greedy path, quick and easy, but ended up getting a lot harder than they realized as they started going and doing more assignments. And they were stuck in that kind of world, that dark world, and built up a lot of enemies, which is kind of showed in the plot. Which, ooh, that would be a nice, cool part of the season. Now I think about it, if they have a second season, because it is implied by one of the characters. I think I have it on my script. She's like an enemy of the Chaus, and she really hates them. I don't know what they did for them to hate her so much, but you know, she really hates the Chaus. So like it'd be cool if like Mooney has some kind of arc where she's trying to fight her past, even though she moved the soul, and somehow they move to find her. But whatever, that's just me theorizing. Mooney is a good artist, like Jentry, which I forgot to mention before. She's a really good artist. It's minor, but she has some great paintings and great drawings that you see sometimes, kind of showing her artistic aspect of Gentry's character. Ping is so minor that it feels kind of like an oversight. Like I get time. He's one of those characters that kind of didn't get wrapped up on this arc. Like everyone else either dies or you know, it's implied that they might go to heaven, they go beyond, or like DU, and try to find their way out of that. But Ping, he dies. He gets used as a pawn to draw Mooney and Jentry in from the Mogwai. And pretty much that's it. That's like his whole character. He barely even gets that much dialogue as it is either. And I get it. Like, this is mostly a female-centric show, so I get it. But for him to be the father of Jentry and Mooney the mother to get, you know, I feel like they should get like an equal point of screen time, or at least them saying like, okay, we're gonna try to get Ping back. Like Jentry never says that. Like when she goes to the underworld and she sees her father getting tortured, he gets like stomped by like a tiger, which is pretty crazy, and dragged back in hell. But you know, she never says like, oh, I'm gonna save dad. It's like, okay, that's just Bur's just burning to hell. So like hopefully like in season 2 maybe that's something they realize, like let's see if we can get him back. But it's also like this another thing where like they probably don't want to do that, because it's like the way their direction went is like accepting what's already happened and moving past it. So I'm assuming storyline wise they probably won't even cover that, or it would just be burning in hell, which is sad and pretty traumatizing. I'd say the amount of trauma that Jentry gets highlighted in the show, that's one I would think would be really traumatizing, hopefully in the next season, or it should have been more in the show. But again, considering the runtime, it's just probably an oversight, or they just couldn't fit it in, which is sad considering that it is technically a crucial character, even though he didn't really get that much, you know, characterization. But you at least see him in flashbacks 1 or 2 times, kind of showing off who he's like, or he's told to us who he's like from Mooney. Like we're told that he was kind of a quirky guy who liked to eat odd foods, and go to like pawn shops and stuff. Which is like oddball things, alternative things. So it's like at least we know that about him, but like everything else, not really. Even Mooney, who has a little bit of screen time near the end, like 2 episodes of screen time, and even then that's like maybe like 10 minutes each. Not 10 minutes, like 5 minutes each. Her character arc, and I'm sorry guys, I'm looking toward the camera, I keep looking at my second screen. Even her characterization feels really rushed too. You know, she gets along with Jentry so quickly, even though she hadn't talked to her for her whole life, basically. Because when the last time she saw her, even though she lost her memories, she was a toddler or a baby, I don't know. She was able to fall. But you know, I'm assuming she was like 1 year old. So considering Gentry's 16, it's like 15 years of her life that she missed. And they get along like this in a montage, a little musical montage of them painting and looking at photos, which I'm not saying isn't possible, but we could have used that screen time a little better, in my opinion. But you know, paying, you know, sad that he doesn't get that much stuff, but regardless, I guess I kind of went over Mooney stuff. I have a stuff for her, but I kind of already did with that. Oh, I'll add too, Mooney was like the cause of Jentry burning down her town. She saw her in the store and not tried to, but she was just trying to look at her. She over time learned, even through her memory loss, there's a little bit of a montage of her finding a bag of money and a knife when she's in her old, the last thing she remembered was an apartment. Every other memory was lost. And over time, I'm assuming 15 years of time, you know, she got a job. She lived in that apartment. She used that money, and she moved to Dallas eventually. And she started doing research on I think she, if I recall, she looked at an article and she saw the name Chau, and that like kind of like sparked something in her mind, and then she went on like a research of finding stuff. And this is all in a music montage, which is like 30 seconds I think. Yeah, but yeah, it's just quick stuff that I wish was maybe an episode instead of just a 30-second clip, but it's just minor stuff. Me and my little mess ups here. Yeah, again, running theme in the show, people deciding who you want to be. Jentry, for example, just wants to be a normal girl, but because of her powers, she can't, and she's expected by Google to use them. And Michael wants to be a musician, but instead he's forced to be the football guy from Texas, especially from his parents and pressured by his peers, because he is as good as in football as a wide receiver, if I recall. And Kit, you know, he's told he can never be human or truly loved by Mr. Chang. And I guess to another extension, Ed is told he isn't scary as a demon, but eventually finds his own avenue of being scary. So, like I said, this is ending soon. Close to 2-hour video, Jesus. Jentry Chau vs. the Underworld. Not a perfect show. Heck, in terms of perfection, this video isn't going to be perfect, even though I really wanted it to be. But you know, despite its flaws, it's a charming story about overcoming guilt from the past, and rekindling family ties, even if they wronged you. So if you're intrigued by this show, not show, by this retrospective, please go and watch Jentry Chau versus the Underworld on Netflix before it's gone one day. We got time before it probably goes away, but you never know. Anyways, thank you for watching. Like the video, subscribe, and have a blessed day. Peace. Keep looking at the second